Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, either way, you're right. James Allen, in 1903, he wrote As a Man Thinketh. And within that book, he had this concept that the human mind is like a garden. And just like a garden, if you don't till and condition the soil, if you don't turn it and prepare the soil for the good seeds to grow, and you don't plant the good seeds, the weeds will naturally take over. But even when you do till the soil and you plant the good seeds, right, it's fun in the beginning. You can make a lot of progress real fast. But as summer sets in, if you don't continue to weed the garden, eventually those weeds will naturally take over then as well. Guys, look, here's the deal. Your mind doesn't know the difference between fact or fiction. And in this video, I'm going to prove that to you, but I'm going to explain to you and show you why some people never win and why champions always win. I'm going to show you the single biggest difference between those who can't never seem to win and the champions who always win. So look, guys, this is Chase with Energy to Conquer, and today is day 55 on my experimental journey to increasing my energy, my mental clarity, and my overall focus. Look, guys, this channel is all about helping you improve your energy, and a lot of that comes through being able to focus your energy, right? So you're not wasting energy, but also through nutrition, through the physical aspects. Like if you feel like you don't have enough energy, if you feel like what you're doing, you know, you're at that place where what you're doing is not working, that's what this channel is about. We're not about quick fixes or, you know, go buy this or that. It's just natural things that we can do starting today that no one's telling us, because you can't make much money from it, right? There's no big millions of dollars to be made. So look, guys, if you feel like things aren't working in your energy game, whether you've got too much and you don't know how to deal with it, or you don't have enough, it's affecting every area of your life. And if that's a place you find yourself in, you only have two options. Either you can continue to do the same thing over and over expecting different results, or you can do something different. And that's what this channel is about, doing something different. So look, guys, today's just a continuation. This is part 5 on the series that I've been doing. So if you go back starting on day 51, right, this is a continuation of that. And guys, look, this one is going to be critical because there's so much to this. Like, this really ties everything together. This thing's going to be super valuable on its own, and some of you, I feel, is going to get a lot from this. Like, this is going to be one of those revelation moments that if you take this away and apply it, this will change your life, right? You're going to get some outcomes out of this. And a lot of people get stuck in this loop. They get stuck in this, I guess, rabbit hole, this delusion that I'm about to reveal to you, and they're never able to get out of it. So guys, be sure to stick to the end of this video, because this is important to anything you do and anything you want in life. Like, this is probably the single greatest key to figuring things out and actually getting the outcomes that you want. So look, guys, you know, I told you in the beginning, your mind doesn't know the difference between fact or fiction. And I'm going to prove that to you right here real quick with something we can all relate to. I know a lot of people, when they hear that, they just, they kind of let it go in one ear and out the other. But this is going to prove it to you without a shadow of a doubt. So your mind doesn't understand the difference between fact or fiction. The problem with that is we tell ourselves a lot of fiction, and we don't even realize it. Like the stories we tell ourselves, there's a lot of fiction in there that we think is true. But before I go into that, I'm going to tell you why or how you can prove that this is true. So when you watch a scary movie, what happens? You get a little nervous, you get a little antsy, you get a little anxious, right? All right, you get a little scared maybe. That's the whole point. Like these Stephen King movies and all these different movies, right? Some of these are really good at it. A lot of them nowadays are just kind of dumb. But some of the older ones, right, they were really good at it, right? And that's the reason people watch it, because they can get into those emotions, right? But the thing is, why are you feeling anxious? Your logical mind knows it's just a movie, right? Why are you getting scared? Like, why is your heart rate up? Why are you breathing a little faster? Why are you on the edge of your seat, right? Why are you gripping the person next to you? Maybe it's that good of a scary movie, right? Because your mind doesn't know the difference between fact and fiction, right? Consciously, you know it's just a movie, but your subconscious mind does not. It has a hard time distinguishing what's real and what's not in these circumstances. And a lot of you know what I'm talking about. And so what's happening is, like, your subconscious mind is trying to create congruency, right, with what it's seeing and your actions, and right, so it feels real. And that's the reason you feel it. Like, you feel it, right? You feel it in your soul, right? You're scared, like, you're tense, you're nervous, you're anxious, whatever it is, right? Whatever these emotions are, you get. And it does the same thing. Suspense movies, same thing. Romance movies, same thing, right? I know that's probably more women get a little bit more into those than men, or maybe men just won't admit it, right? I don't know. But you guys all know what I'm talking about. The Lifetime channel, they play on this, right? Because people get so caught up into those shows and movies, right, that it feels like reality. So they're escaping reality because their subconscious has a hard time in the moment of distinguishing the difference between what's real and what's not. So they get lost in the movie, and they feel, right, they feel what's going on, they feel the character's pain, right, they feel the character's suffering. So guys, that's proof. Now here's the thing, we do this every day in our life, like with the things we say. If we say, you know, I could never do that, right? If we say, I'm just a fat loser, right? Or we say, I'm an idiot, I'm stupid, I can't never stick to a diet, right? I can't never stick to a workout plan. No matter what I do, I always fail, right? Can't never seem to figure things out, right? Whatever it is you say, like, these are all self-talk issues. And the thing is, when you say those things, guess what happens? It's being recorded in here. So consciously, you know it's not the truth, or maybe you don't. But as you speak it, right, it kind of starts getting programmed in here. So then when you try to set these goals to lose 50 pounds, start a workout plan, maybe increase your income, maybe, you know, get a promotion at work, whatever you set your goals out to be, maybe it's just spend more time with your kids, whatever that is, your subconscious is saying bullshit, 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 you're not good enough, right? You don't never stick to anything. That's what it's saying right here, right? Because it doesn't know that difference between fact or fiction. But when you say those things, it's recording, and it's taking it as fact, right? Because it can't distinguish the difference. So when you go to set your mind to do big things or to do hard things, guess what's happening? Those old loops are getting played back in your mind. Consciously, you know it's not true. Subconsciously, it's just based it off the data you put in it, right? And whatever data you put in the most, whether it's negative or positive, that data is what it's going to try to make congruent in the world that's in front of you, right? And so that's where we get into the conversation of, you know, we all know self-fulfilling prophecies, right? Whether good or bad. People do this in their health, right? They completely talk themselves out of health until they have major health problems, right? I mean, it does it in their income, right? You look at people's mindsets and how they view money and the things they say about money. People at a poverty level, people at a middle class level, people at an upper class level, people at an elite level, right? And I'm not trying to stereotype, it's just there's different mindsets. And the common denominator between these classes of people is not their ability, it's not their IQ, it's their mindset. It's how they think about money. Same thing with fit people and unfit people. It's not a difference of IQ. It's not a difference of intelligence. It's not a difference of age. It's not a difference of sex. It's not a difference of race. It's not a difference in any of these things. The only difference is their mindset, right? The stories that they're telling themselves. And here's the problem with all of this. It's going to tie some of this together. The problem with every single bit of this is the difference between facts and truth, right? Truth is often delusion. And here's what I mean. Truth is subjective reality based on our lens, based on our emotions, based on our feelings. Facts are objective reality. They are what they are, right? And I'm going to give you an example of this. With objective reality would be, if you're more than 50 pounds overweight, you've got an 80% chance, it's 80% higher chance of developing heart disease, cancer, diabetes. Right? I don't know if that's true, so don't fact check this and put the facts down there. I'm just using this as an example because we all know if you're over 50 pounds overweight, the ones of us that'll admit it, you're at a higher risk for all these things. That's kind of common knowledge. We know that. That's objective reality, right? It doesn't matter what you feel. It doesn't matter your experience. Like, it is what it is. Like, that's what the data is telling us, right? Subjective reality is you're healthy, right? It's okay to be a little overweight, right? It's okay to be overweight. You're beautiful just like you are. There's nothing wrong with being overweight. That's subjective reality. And here's the difference in those two. One makes you extremely uncomfortable if you're 50 pounds overweight or 100 pounds overweight or 150 pounds overweight. Like, one makes you extremely uncomfortable, and one makes you feel good. And the problem is most people, emotionally, they just want to feel good. They don't want to think anything that's going to make them feel uncomfortable here, right? So they get in this trap and they start telling these stories and they start justifying, right? All these things is subjective reality. The truth is often delusion, right? Because we're basing it off of feelings and emotions, right? We're looking at it through the lens and we don't even realize we're doing it. And a lot of times, guess what this comes back to? This comes back to the messages we're sending in here that we was talking about before, right? Those self-fulfilling prophecies. All this comes back. So that's forming your story, right? That you're telling yourself of this delusion. Instead of living in objective reality, you're living in delusion because of this story that you're programming, because your mind doesn't know the difference between fact and fiction, and you're telling it fiction and it's recording it and believing it, and now you want to change it and you want to do something about it, but you can't. You're stuck and you can't figure it out. So guys, the biggest, I guess, example with this is you get into, I guess, kind of the working class and even the poverty class mentality. What do they put their hope in? When you start talking about money and start talking about dreams, it usually, if they have any at all, it's going to sound something like this. Well, one day when I win the lottery, or if I ever win the lottery, you know what they're doing there? This is part of this programming up here, and that's the reason they're stuck at that level, and that's the reason they'll probably never achieve that, because they have no belief in themselves and their ability to accomplish that, right? They have no belief that they could ever accomplish that, so they have to put their hopes, they have to put their dreams into something external out of their control, right? So something external out of their control that's going to change. The only thing that's going to change their circumstances, the only hope they have is this external lottery money that they probably got a greater chance of getting struck by lightning than winning. And that's a hard truth, right? That's objective reality right there. Some of you know what I'm talking about, right? It's uncomfortable too if you know. So guys, that's kind of where we're at, and that's the stories that's coming from this subjective reality. Because guess what? It doesn't matter. Like, anyone can change their circumstances, but when we get these stories in our head that we can't, right? Because the truth is, when we start pointing out our shortcomings, it becomes uncomfortable. When we point out things that we could do that we can't, that we're not doing, it becomes uncomfortable. We get guilt, we get shame, we get anxiety, we get pressure, we get all these emotions, right? And it's hard to change. Like, it's hard, right? But as long as you comfort that and escape the objective reality by trying to make yourself feel better in subjective reality, right? Subjective truths, which are not really truths at all, they're delusions and the story we tell ourselves. it makes it almost difficult to succeed. So look, guys, you know, and to kind of close that up, I'm going to tell you a little story here. But the thing with this is that the reason that we operate today, so much of us are operating in this, like, we've got more information than we've ever had in the world. We have information at our fingertips. We can go buy used books on any subject for probably under $6 on Amazon. Like there's so much information. We got more information than any other time in the history of humans, right? We got more information that we're available to, but yet we make more excuses. We live in these false truths, probably more than any other time in human history as well. And here's why: we're comfortable. We're just comfortable. So when we get comfortable, you know, and it's not necessarily that we're comfortable, but it's more comfortable to stay where we're at, or at least that's the story we tell ourselves, than it is to change. But when circumstances change, it forces the human mind to evolve, and the greatest minds come from struggle, right? It comes from these hardships where they don't have the option to be comfortable. They just have to figure it out. And the problem is our society in Western culture has had it so good for so long that we're comfortable, right? We've not had the struggle. You go back, you look at the things that come out of struggle, like you look at the hardship, like the things that come out of the hardship and the abilities and just the, I guess, expansion of thought of the human mind, right? And you go all the way back to the Greeks and some of these like Stoics and these just philosophers. Like it's mind-boggling to think that these guys were so smart back then, but it's because there wasn't a whole lot of comfort back then, right? And if you even look like Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, man, like stuff that he was able to say and comprehend, right? Because he knew this stuff, right? He knew, like, he survived, for those of you who don't know, he survived Nazi concentration camp. He was a Jew, wrote a book. I think he was a psychologist, but he ended up writing a book, you know, why people survived, some people didn't. But he knew, like, he had to, you know, sometimes you have to use that subjective reality, right? Those false truths to get you through the hard times. And that's kind of taking it to the next level, right? So now you start telling your stuff that isn't true to get you to where you want to go. That's a whole nother level. But you know, that hardship opened up his mind. And even if you go back, you look at anyone great, you go look at the you know, some of the people that come out of the Great Depression, some of the great minds always come from hardship. Even I mentioned James Allen at the beginning of this. Dude's story is crazy. Go look it up. Like, his dad left, I think he was about 9. He had about 5 younger siblings. He left Europe, come to the US, all they had was like $17. He took every bit of it to go start a foundation and then kind of get a place and then get them to come over. 2 months, they never heard nothing from him. 2 months later, they got a letter in the mail saying he was murdered and robbed for the 17 bucks as soon as he got off the boat in Ellis Island. So this guy had to step in. He was like 9 years old or something, and had to step in and become, I guess, the man of the household and kind of help take care of his mom and his siblings at a young age, and just that struggle. But he ended up becoming one of the greatest minds of that time. So I think he died in 1912. But he wrote a bunch of essays, and so you can go look those up for yourself. But the famous was As a Man Thinketh. And then, but you can go look at Martin Luther King, like that struggle, the mind that come out of that, take that back another level, go back all the way to Frederick Douglass. Like, this dude, like, people talk about hardship, they talk about suppression, they talk about all this stuff now. This dude overcome all of it. Probably one of the smartest minds to ever come out of America. It's through that struggle, that hardship, right? He didn't live in the delusion, right? He lived in objective reality. And that's the difference, right? That's the difference between people who win and people who can't never figure out how to win. That's the difference between the champions and the ones who can't never figure out how to win. It's that the ones who can't never figure out how to win, they can't never figure out how to get out of this delusion, truth. They operate in what they believe to be as true, which is often subjective reality, right? It's based on emotions. It's based on their feelings. But the truth is, like, the champions, right? The real truth, like, they're based in facts, objective reality, right? They're based in those facts, and they operate based on the facts, regardless of how the emotions feel. And they're able to push through that because they know they've got to get to reality. They've got to get real to get to where they want to go. And guys, so, you know, the last part of this, just to wrap it up, one of those great minds that come out of that was, you know, that struggle was George Washington. And, you know, the reason I say George Washington is because he literally failed at every single thing that he did. Like every single thing that he did, he failed at. And a lot of people don't know this. They just think he's like this great guy and he's just super whatever and he's super wise and all-knowing. But that wisdom came from failure. And I've been talking about this week, like I've been talking about all this stuff. So go back and watch the last videos. I'm going to link them all. There's 5 series part. So this is like probably the last one. So just, I'm going to link them. You can go look in the comments. Just go back and watch through all those. They ain't really titled, but I've got them listed in each one. So you can just go to the next one, go to the next one. So, but George Washington, you know, he failed so many times. But he never gave up. He never got caught up in this game of truth. He was a champion, right? He was a champion. Even though he kept failing, he kept getting this defeat after defeat after defeat. His whole life, right? I think he was set up to go to England, to college, get an education, whatever the education was, college, university, I don't know what they called it then. He was going, his dad ends up dying, his older brothers got to go, so he felt inadequate his whole life because he never had the education. And he's tried to get and be an army general, failed so many times. It really wasn't possible because he didn't have the education, so he could never really get into the British military. And it was just one failure after another. And, you know, he ended up giving up on that. And it was just, he got into farming, way in debt over his head. Like, it was just failure, 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 failure. And then somehow he ends up becoming the leader of the American Army, right? So the Constitutional Army, it was George Washington. And how he got there, I don't know. I'm sure he was a pretty amazing guy, but the thing was, he lived in objective reality, right? He was a champion. Because all those failures, he just took all that data, he took all that information and just kept growing. He didn't get a poor pitiful me story, right? Because if he did, we'd never heard about him, right? He didn't get caught up in that story of, you know, I'm not good enough, I'm just a failure, I'm not smart enough. These other guys are smarter than me, they're more capable. You know, I'm just destined to lose, or whatever it is, right? I'm too fat, I'm too skinny, I'm too tall, I'm too short, right? Don't have enough money, parents didn't have enough money. You know, we can make excuses all day long. George Washington didn't do that. You know, I'm sure he had days where he was down, I'm sure he had days where he kicked himself, but you know what? He just kept going, just kept going, just kept going, just kept going, right? Because he lived in objective reality, because he knew the past doesn't equal his future, right? Just because he failed all those times, it doesn't mean like that's a reflection on him, right? But he also knew that wisdom that came from that, right? So this is what happened in the American Revolution. Most people don't know, George Washington got his ass kicked all the way from New York down to the Delaware River. It was bad. The Americans were about to lose the war, and morale was at all-time low. And then it was Christmas Eve night of December 24th, 1776. They gathered a surprise attack on the Hessian army. So they was on the other side of the Delaware River in Trenton, New Jersey, I think. So George Washington knew he had to do something. He knew he had to raise the morale of the American people, of the civilians and the military, right? He knew he had to do something. They was under-equipped, underfunded, and this thing was going, it was a disaster, right? His leadership was extremely in question. It was like in question, like, and obviously it looked like he was the wrong guy. They had screwed up. The Americans had screwed up, and it's going to cost them this war because they put the wrong guy in charge. Things were looking terrible. He could have easily got caught up in that truth, right? That story we tell ourselves. Said, man, I screwed this up. There's no way we can win. That's what everybody else was thinking. This isn't looking good, right? This is going south fast, a lot faster than we thought. All that hope, all that enthusiasm, everybody was rallied up, and part of them was, right, they was ready to go. They're going to take on the English crown. And now they just got their ass kicked from the start all the way down. Like, they just basically pushing them through the country, the Continental Army, at will, right? They're just running basically. So George Washington got to do something. All those years of failure, like all those hard lessons, all that grit that he learned, like he could deal with the failure. That's how he was able to do this, right? He would have probably quit. Anyone else probably would have resigned before it got that far. But he knew, he believed, he maintained that belief in his head, right? Because he had had all those experiences that led him that far. So George Washington planned the surprise attack. He knew he had to do it, and it was pretty much a last-ditch effort to win this war, to have any chance at winning this war. They crossed the Delaware River into Trenton, New Jersey, to attack the Hessian army, which was, or a garrison of Hessian troops, which was, they're basically German mercenaries, and these were some of the toughest guys, the most trained soldiers in the world at that time. Basically, they were like the Navy SEALs of today, right? They were, the English crown was paying them to come fight their war for them, and they were a group of elites. George Washington had a ragtag, undertrained, underfunded, under-equipped group of men, and so they crossed the Delaware on Christmas Eve night into Christmas morning in the middle of a storm. I think it was snowing, I think it was sleeting. It was a blizzard, like it was terrible conditions, and it was Christmas on top of it. They knew they could get them at Christmas because they would be not expecting it, right? And so they ended up crossing the Delaware. Half the Continental troops get lost, never make it to the battle. Half the troops pretty much decimate the Hessian army, and they win the battle. And that one battle turned around the whole war. Everything was pretty much lost at that point, and this thing was going nowhere. And it was just as the English crown had predicted and wanted up to that point. But this one battle sent shockwaves through the world, because what it did is it created seeds of doubt all through the British Army, all the way to the British crown. And they're like, maybe we need to take this a little bit more serious, right? Like, you know, it just created, I'm sure they still thought they was going to win. They still thought they was going to crush them, but now it's like, oh, wow. Like, where did that come from? Maybe there's a little bit more to this. They planted that little seed of doubt. But more importantly than that seed of doubt in the enemy, it created hope in the American people, right? Or the colonists at that time. It created this hope, right? And the civilians, you know, the Americans just defeated one of the most elite fighting groups in the world, right? They just won the battle against one of the most elite fighting groups in the world. Underfunded, under-equipped, under-trained. This gave everyone hope. It was hope through the military, all the leadership, and it renewed hope. So now, for the first time since the war started, right? I'm sure they was thinking when they started they wouldn't have got involved, but after it got started, it was going south, and I'm sure a lot of people lost morale. Morale was down. But now, for the first time since the war began, everybody's saying, oh, we've got a chance. Wait a minute, we've actually got a chance. We can do this, right? We can do this. So what everyone else was living in that truth, in that subjective reality, telling themselves stories, this ain't going to end good. There's no way we can win. It wasn't truth, obviously. It wasn't fact. It's truth in their minds, right? George Washington knew better. He never gave up hope, right? He lived in objective reality. He knew we just need one strategic battle and we can turn this thing around. And how did he get that mindset? How did he develop that character, that determination and all that, right? He did it through all those years of failure, all those failed attempts that seemed like they were pointless, seemed like his life was a failure, right? But he just kept moving along, taking the information and moving with it, right? Everywhere he turned, he kept doing everything wrong. Nothing seemed to be working out. But the reason those things weren't working out was because it was teaching him the lessons he needed to get to something bigger, right? It was teaching him the lessons that he needed to fulfill his destiny. It was leading him, teaching him everything he needed to know to end up becoming one of the greatest leaders in world history, right? George Washington has to be in the conversation You know, I may be biased because I'm in America, but it has to be in a conversation with, you know, with the Romans, right? You got Caesar, and you got all these, you know, we got Alexander the Great, and we've got all these, because what they did was impossible. They did the impossible, right? So I don't think how you can't, you know, he was titled the father, I guess, founding father of America, or one of the founding fathers, right? And there was a lot of other people that played there, and a lot of other great minds, but again, all that come through struggle. They wasn't telling themselves delusion, they was telling themselves facts, right? So look, guys, you know, this went way long, right? But here's the thing. I've laid out for you how to start shifting your mindset so you can start living in objective reality and get out of the I guess, get out of the false truth, the delusion of what we call truth, right? But more importantly, I've given you a plan to develop and plant those seeds of hope within you in these last 4 videos before this. Starting on day 51, you can go back, you can look in the description. But, you know, I've strategically laid out for you over those days. Like all these you can watch individually, or you can watch them, but when you watch them collectively, they're all going to piece together. I've strategically laid out for you guys how you can restore, how you can do that surprise attack crossing the Delaware River, right? How you can do that Washington move in your own life, right? Because all you got to do is just restore just a little bit of hope. And that little bit of hope leads to a little bit more hope, leads to a little bit more hope. It ends up leading to a lot of hope, right? But you got to start. And it starts by getting out of that delusion that we call truth, get into objective reality. And what I mean by getting out of the delusion is getting out of the delusion that I'm not good enough. I can't never stick to anything, right? I'm fat, I'm ugly, because I'm this, I can't do this, right? Whatever it is, right? I'm not from this type of family. I'm this race. I'm this sex. I'm from this country. I don't speak fluently. I've got an accent. That's the delusion that we call truth, because it's not true at all. It's not fact. It's not objective reality, and it's killing us, and it's keeping us from every single thing that we want. So here's the thing, guys, like, you've got to get out of that delusion. The first place is realizing that it's not true. And you got to realize that your mind, whenever time you say that, your subconscious mind is going to make congruent in your world what you're saying. And it's a very dangerous thing, right? There's a book by Shed Helmstetter called What to Say When You Talk to Yourself. There's another book, I'll try to link it in here. I can't remember the exact name of it. It's a short book. I think it's like $5 on Amazon. Check out that book, because that's talking about these conversations in your head. It goes a lot deeper than I've went into today. But the thing is, guys, you've got to start. You've got to get out of that, and you've got to start building stories and changing that truth that you tell yourself, right? Because your mind don't know. It's subjective reality that you can do it, right? And how do you do that? We can say cantations all day long. I can. And maybe that'll work. But I'm saying, if you can get some wins, you're going to emotionally feel it. Just a little wins. Start with little wins. Stack those little wins. They get a little bigger, get a little bigger, get a little bigger, get a little bigger. Next thing you know, you got huge wins, and you believe you can do anything. But it's a muscle you got to develop, and you got to start small, build it big, right? And then you feel it. You feel it. So you say, I'm going to do that. You're like, boom, I got this, right? This is mine. I'm taking it. Versus, yeah, I got this. Yeah, I'm going to do that. But you know, back here, you don't feel it here. You feel doubt. You feel doubt right here, right? You feel that doubt. You don't feel confident. You don't feel inspired. It's because your muscle's weak, and you got to develop it. You got to learn to develop this stuff. So look, guys, you're never going to achieve what you think you can achieve, right? And your belief in yourself is a skill that you've got to develop. And that was the point of this whole video, is you've got to develop that. And I've took you around the world to get to that point, right? I could have just said it. But I hope some of this stuff I said is going to stick with you. And it's going to open your eyes to a new reality. Help you look more objectively. Give you the courage that you need to look more objectively. Because the truth, or the facts is, let me say fact, is you're never going to get to where you want to go as long as you're living in delusion, right? Until you believe in here, you're never going to get to where you want to go. And so believing in here, two things you got to do. Number one, you got to stop telling yourself lies. You got to stop telling yourself lies as if they're true, because it believes that they're true here when you tell them, even though they're lies, right? That delusion. Are you operating in truth or in facts? Or are you operating in delusion? You got to stop operating delusion. I'm not good enough. I don't ever stick to things. Here's the thing, guys. No matter what your circumstances is, no matter what your background is, where you came from, what you've been through, I don't care what country you came from. I don't care what circumstances are stacked against you your whole life or today. I don't care what you've had to overcome. I don't care what you still have to overcome, right? I don't care all the things you've overcome. I don't care. Because the truth is, the objective reality is, I know it and you know it. There's always someone who's had to overcome a lot more and did overcome a lot more than you have to overcome. Someone in a similar situation, but worse, that rose to the highest level. And that's the beauty of the information we have access today, is because we have access to so many people we wouldn't have had access to 100 years ago. We wouldn't have known their stories, right? But now we know, right? We know objective reality doesn't match the truth that we tell ourselves in our heads. Whatever you want to achieve, somebody's went and paved that road in front of you and done it. And if you really want to know how to do it, go study what they did and model what they did. Model their plan, see if that works for you. Maybe you need to tweak it. Maybe their plan works perfectly. Maybe their plan don't work for you. But at least that gives you a starting point on what you need to do. So look, guys, you got to get back and live in objective reality and stop living in delusion. The problem is, when you look at poverty, if you know anyone that lives in poverty, take this conversation I'm saying and kind of analyze that person. Conversations they have, what they talk about, how they think about, how they feel about money, how they feel about diet and nutrition, how they feel about all these things, and see if they're living in objective reality or if they're living in delusion, in truth. Like it's things that they think is true, but it's not facts. Living in their own little truths of delusion. And I'm not saying, you know, sometimes people just down their luck. I'm saying people that's been there their whole life and there's no chance of them ever doing any different. There's a reason for that, and it's right here. And you've got to be smart enough to look at these people and see what they're doing to get those results. And you got to make sure that you're doing something different, because if you do the same thing that they're doing, you're going to get the same results they've got, right? So we got to be careful. We got to be mindful of this stuff. We start becoming aware of all this stuff, right? That's what helps us get to where we want to go. So that was step one. Just get out of, just get out of that delusion. Stop operating from what you believe to be as true and start operating in objective reality, no matter how uncomfortable it makes you feel. Because the truth is, the more uncomfortable you feel, just like George Washington, just like all these famous people, like that's what creates sharp minds. That's what creates revolutionary minds and revolutionary thoughts. That's what creates minds that go on to do great things. Great thought leaders, right? It's that uncomfortable, that struggle, right? It's not running from things that are uncomfortable, because that's what most of us are conditioned to do, because society has made life so comfortable for us, right? The poorest people in America are overweight. Doesn't make sense, does it? Right? Their needs are still getting met. The poorest people in Africa is a different story. The poorest people in India is a different story, right? The poorest people in wherever, anywhere, Asia, South America, doesn't matter, Middle East, right? It's a different story. They're not. You won't find a poor person 100 pounds overweight, because they're going to say that person really isn't poor, right? They've got what they need. They just don't have money. But the government's giving them the money, the food, right? The nutrition that they need to sustain, which is maintaining life. Because something magic happens when you get hungry. Hunger has a power. Hunger is so powerful, right? It changes generations, people say. I've been hungry, I'm never going back. Being hungry opens up parts of your mind that you didn't believe in. Andrew Carnegie talks about your other self. When your back gets backed into a wall, and you do something that you don't know how to get it, like when you look back, when your back's been against the wall in circumstances, like, I don't know how I did that. I don't know how I knew to do that. I don't know how I had the strength to do that. I don't know how I had the courage to do that. Like, it just blows your mind. And we've all been in those situations where just our backs are completely against the wall. And if we were to sit even now and think about what we could do, like what would we do in that situation? Like, I don't know if I could do it again. I don't know if I could have the courage, the strength, whatever, right? But somehow we did it. and we fought our way out of it. Andrew Carnegie calls that your other self, right? When you get back into the wall so far, it's like you tap into this supernatural power that we don't even realize we have. Like we tap into like this superhuman strength, right? This superhuman mind to be able to solve problems and move through them. And that's one of the things that hunger does for a lot of people, right? That's the reason that people that grow up comfortable, right? I'm not saying their life's perfect, but I'm saying they're comfortable. Their needs are met. They got a roof over their head. They got heat. They got air conditioning, and they got food, and they got water, right? They got clothes to wear. May not be what they want, right? They're comfortable, right? And when you're comfortable like that, and you're just kind of middle of the road, it's hard to rise above that, right? It's hard to rise above that when you're comfortable. It's the reason first generation wealth is so strong. It's such a high number that wealth is first generation. Society don't tell you that. They want you to believe it's all inherited, but second generation wealth is way lower than first generation wealth, because usually what happens is first generation experiences those hardships, push themselves through them, figure out how to survive, put their mind to work, their other self, like they grow, they tap into resources that most people are not willing to tap into because they're more comfortable and they don't want to get uncomfortable. Whereas the person that's forced to tap into these resources don't have a choice. They're trying to survive. They're in survival mode and they end up rising to the top. But what happens? They create this luxury for their children, right? And so they end up, they don't understand it. And within 1 or 2 generations, they've blowed all that inheritance money and they're broke, right? Generation wealth usually don't last very long. Only a select few families are able to continue and maintain generational wealth. Anyways, guys, so one, to change this is you got to do what, like you've got to get out of truths of what you believe to be real and start operating in objective reality of what actually is the facts. Like you got to stop operating truth, start operating facts, because most of the time our truth is just stories that we tell ourselves. It's nothing more than lies and delusion, right? They're stories. That's what they are. They're not facts. We tell ourselves truth is based on emotions and feelings. Facts are just facts. They're black and white, right? They're just numbers on this like when you do this, you get this outcome. Happens 90% of the time, right? It's facts. So the other part of that is you got to develop self-belief. Self-belief's a skill, and that's the part of this series, right? So there's 2 nuggets on here today. Part of this whole series, you go back and watch through those. I'll link them in the description. Like, you just got to develop that self-belief. It's a muscle that you got to develop. We're not born with this stuff, right? Some of us are, depending on the environment. Most of us are not born in those environments where it's fostered and nurtured, right? To develop this self-worth, self-belief. Like most, I'm not saying our parents are bad parents, but most are well-meaning, but they just don't know how they're self. Most of them don't have the self-confidence and self-esteem and self-worth and self-belief, right? So we got to develop that ourselves. We got to take that upon ourselves. We got to get uncomfortable, right? So we can actually get the things that we want in life. Live in the real comfort, not the delusion of comfort, right? So guys, look. 1, change your story. Operate in objective reality instead of what you believe to be true. That's the difference between people who can't seem to ever win. They operate in truth, what they believe to be true. Champions operate in facts. Number 2 is it's a muscle, right? Your self-belief and your belief in yourself to be able to accomplish things is a muscle, and it's something that you develop. You got to get this right, but then you got to go to work. You got to get this right, start operating in facts here, start telling yourself facts here. Someone else has done it, I can do it. Right? If 1,000,000 people came before me, there's no doubt in my mind that I can do it, right? And that's where most of us are at. But millions of people have come before us trying to do what we're trying to do, but we tell ourselves we're not good enough. You know, we can never do that. So next part is just developing that muscle. I've laid out the formula for you in these previous videos on what you can do step by step. Start where you're at. You don't have to take on the world overnight, because most of the time when we try to do that, we just set ourselves up to fail. Doesn't matter if you want to lose weight, you want to get fit, you want to increase your energy, increase your income. It doesn't matter. You want to improve your family, you want to improve your relationships. It doesn't matter. You can apply this to any area of life. It's all there. Guys, I have laid the keys down for you. All you got to do is put them in the lock, do the work to turn the key and unlock the lock to get to whatever you want. Guys, that's all I've got for you today. If you like this content, if you found anything of value in this, be sure to subscribe. But more importantly than to subscribe, give me a like. Come on, guys. I put a lot of effort into this. just give me a like. If you find value in this, give me a like, right? Leave me a comment, let me know. Look, your engagement helps me reach more people. So if you like this, tell me in the comments. If you don't like it, if you think something I said was out of line, tell me in the comments. I don't care, right? Let's start a conversation in the comments. Leave me a comment, leave me a like if you like it. Yeah, that's all I got for you today. As you can change your energy situation. Your energy is at the core of everything you do. When your energy is not right, every area of your life is going to be off. It's going to be screwed up. That's what this channel is about. So this conversation doesn't seem like it has anything to do with energy, but it has everything to do with energy, right? Because it's building that momentum, that steam, right? That belief, because that is the core of getting the rest of this stuff like right. So anyways, guys, that's all I got for you today. This is a huge video, but it's a good one, guys. There's some nuggets in there, and it's going to change some of your lives forever. Leave me that like. Hit that thumbs up. Later, guys.